In section 4, we're going to look at rectangles. So we'll look at applying properties of rectangles and then determine whether a parallelogram is a rectangle or not on a coordinate plane. So first thing, what is the definition of a rectangle? A rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. So notice in the definition, we actually define a rectangle as a parallelogram, which means then a rectangle has all the properties of a parallelogram. We just go a little bit further in terms of some of the properties. So one of the properties specifically to a rectangle is it now has 4 right angles. And another property has to go with the diagonals. In a rectangle, we're going to say that the diagonals are congruent. Remember, in a parallelogram, we only knew that the diagonals bisected each other. Now in a rectangle, we can say the diagonals are congruent. So if I go back to our quadrilateral tree over here, underneath of a parallelogram, we're going to fit a rectangle. You can see that's what I've done here. It just adds 2 properties. Diagonals are congruent, and we get 4 right angles. So in example 1, we're just going to apply some of these properties. A rectangular park has 2 walking paths as shown. PS is one of the sides, is 180 meters. PR tells us is 200 meters. It wants us to find QT. Well, if PR is 200 and it wants us to find QT in here, remember we know the diagonals are congruent in this case, and we still know that they bisect each other. So we're going to take half of 200, which in this case is 100 meters, which would be the length of QT. I got a couple more down here. In letter A, it tells us that TS, half of the diagonal, is 120. It wants us to now find PR, which is, again, the whole diagonal. So instead of going the other, now we're going the other way. So we're going to double 120, which is now 240 meters. The last one has to deal with angles, so it's a little bit different. This time it tells us angle PRS. So PRS is this one. It is 64 degrees. It wants us to find angle SQR, which is this one. Well, knowing that we have 4 right angles, we should be able to find this angle right here, TRQ, which in this case would be 26 degrees. The interesting part, when I form the diagonals in a rectangle, I'm going to outline this. We form a triangle in here. This triangle is an isosceles triangle because we know the diagonals are congruent. So if we know that this angle here is 26, then this angle up here should also be 26 degrees because it's across from a congruent side length.